Welcome to Higher Ground Living, practical tools for lasting change. I'm Tommy Bates. Join me as we explore relationships, faith, emotional health, and the simple strategies that can help you build a better life. Hi, folks. Welcome to the Stuff That Works podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Before I get started, let me say this podcast is not a substitute for therapy. If you need therapy, please reach out and find a good counselor. Get some recommendations from someone you trust. If you want to know more about me, please check out my website at highergroundliving.net. You may have heard, as a man or woman thinks, so are they. Our thoughts shape what we believe about ourselves, about our circumstances, our attitudes. They're super important. And everyone can improve how you think, no matter who you are. Thinking impacts anxiety, depression, fuels insecurities, and for some people, keeps us awake at night. It can cause us to be crippled with fear, rage, and all kinds of emotions. So I want to help all my podcast listeners today. I want to help you become mental warriors. I want to give you some skills that'll help you start gaining control over your thoughts, which will hopefully help you gain control over your life. And I have a specific plan with concrete steps. It's not something that's going to come easily. You're going to have to stay at it minute by minute, day by day. But I want to tell you, you can grow. I'm a pretty old dog, but I can still learn new tricks. You may have done life for 50 or more years, and your habits and thinking patterns may be pretty set. But I promise, if you try this and stay vigilant, you can improve. So we have so many voices coming at us in this age. We've got Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Everywhere you go, somebody's trying to get your attention with some information that you desperately need to know. We're absolutely saturated with information. Most of it's aimed at trying to sell us something. You may even feel like this podcast is trying to sell you something. Maybe you're tired of being influenced. Well, this message is all about how to start listening to the most powerful voice, the one in your head. So I want to tell you about a research study. They had two groups, and they're both asked to remember a stressful event in their lives. One group was asked to keep ruminating on the event, every aspect of it, over a period of time. The other was asked to shift their thoughts into something positive. Both started off thinking about this stressful thing that happened in their life, but one was asked to keep thinking about it, the other to change their thoughts to gratitude, some of the good things in their life. They weren't asked to deny that they were dealing with stress, but to concentrate on something better. And guess what? They did blood work from both groups, and they tracked the white blood cells. And they tracked this marker in the blood, I think it was called IgA, and that related to their immune systems. And I have to tell you, there were significant differences in both groups. And here's the conclusion. Grinding on stressful events for a long period of time literally lowers your immune system. That is a scientific fact. This study proved that. So learning to control your thoughts can actually add years to your life. This is serious stuff, y'all. If you've developed patterns of thinking over a period of 30 or 40 years, you're going to have to take a lot of intentional work to correct it. Something you have to stay after. You're going to hear me say that over and over in this podcast. It's going to take consistent effort. So you're going to have to practice over and over again, every day. Are you ready? So here's my method that I've seen help clients over, a long period of time. And it's also helped me too. First of all, I want to say this to begin with. You can't control the fact that things pop into your brain. That's going to happen. I'm not really concentrating on this part. This thought process, this plan that I'm trying to help you accomplish is not necessarily related to these weird thoughts. But sometimes you just have weird thoughts that pop into your brain. Random thoughts, irrational, unsettling thoughts that pop into your brain from time to time. Stuff that makes you ask, where in the world did that come from? And I hope you won't be surprised by that. I hope you don't get bogged down with those random thoughts. Just shake your head. Maybe even think about shaking your hands downward to just kind of shake that stuff out of your system. But don't waste time on random thoughts or let them take root. You just simply need to shift your mind to something else. And, if you're a Christian, you may have something you need to confess in the middle of that, something you feel is wrong. But just the main thing is try to move on. It's important. Now, what I'm really talking about here, what I'm trying to target here are the thoughts that you grind on, things that you ruminate on. I think of like a cow chewing on its cud. things that you let twirl around in your head, bounce around in your head over and over and over again. And if you remember our talk in episode 3 about anxiety, part of this thinking plan will also include reminding yourself to shift away from these thoughts if you're thinking too far backwards in the past on trauma or regret. If you're thinking too far forward into the future, grinding on things that haven't happened yet, suffering twice, this plan is going to include trying to fix that, to recognize when you're thinking too far backwards or thinking too far forwards. And then also, anxiety, talking about things that are outside of your control. If you're grinding on things that you can't control, I want you to include that. This is, this plan's going to apply to those type of thoughts too. And if you did miss the podcast about anxiety, please feel free to go back to it. Maybe you thought, hey, I don't have anxiety, but it's still, the principles involved in it could still be beneficial, even if you don't feel like you have a diagnosis of anxiety. So in addition to that, we're talking about unhealthy thoughts about yourself, beating yourself up, dwelling on shame rather than coaching yourself with guilt. Remember, shame disintegrates. Shame breaks you down. Shame says, you're a terrible person. Shame says you're weak, you're broken, you're too far gone. All of that I want to include in trying to shift away from those type of thoughts. So what I want to ask you to do, you may not have time at the moment and you may have to just kind of imagine it, but if you do have time later on, I want to ask you, take a piece of paper, blank piece of paper, turn it landscape, widthwise. And what I want to ask you to do is draw a funnel on the right side. You may not be the best artist. That's fine. I'm not either, but draw a funnel the best you can. And then I want to ask you on the top part of the funnel to sketch some lines, perpendicular from each other to look like a funnel, make some go one direction and then the 90 degrees the other direction to kind of make a screen on top of the funnel. That's the visual that we're trying to create, and if you don't have time to draw that right now, just imagine it. So above the funnel, I want you to take a minute to write down some of these thoughts that you keep grinding on. Maybe you write the word shame. Maybe you write the word depressive, for depressive thoughts. Maybe the helplessness, I feel helpless. Maybe the name of somebody who's hurt you. Might be your boss, might be a political leader, you name it. Anything that's gotten into your head that you want out, write it down above that funnel. And I would encourage you, keep this piece of paper and, keep adding to it. You might have other things that pop up a little later on. Anytime you identify something that's getting lodged in your brain, you can write it down there. Now, underneath the funnel, I want you to write these words: the word true, the word noble, the word right, the word pure, the word lovely, the word admirable. And then write this phrase: dwell on these things. So for those of you who are Christians, this comes from the scripture Philippians 4:8. I call it the Philippians 4:8 filter. It says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Now, your version of scripture may have some different adjectives, and that's fine, but the essence is the same. Only let the stuff that's true and helpful through the funnel. The stuff that you want to filter out needs to be blocked by shifting your mind. Now, I'm not going to give you this plan without giving you a practical way to accomplish it, so bear with me. We'll get to that. I'm going to give you some practical steps. This is stuff that works, so you're going to get some practical steps to accomplish that. But for now, I just want you to imagine this funnel and recognize, think about the goal. The goal is to filter out, to shift away from negative thoughts, and it works, y'all, for real. If you genuinely try to accomplish it over and over and over, it actually works. And you may doubt this. I understand. You may doubt yourself and your ability to win, to beat this problem. But I can tell you that the victory in this area of your life is not going to be achieved all at once. It's going to be little wins here and there. It's going to take thousands of reps day after day. Just think about how long it's taken you to develop these negative patterns in your life. You might be 30, 40, 50 years old, since childhood, years and years and years to develop these patterns. So it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take consistency. I heard a good counselor one time say, when you're trying to develop a new plan in your brain, It's kind of like cutting a trail in the woods. You first have to cut the trees down, and then you cut the bushes and the vines. And then it's still not a trail until you walk it over and over and over again. After you've trodden it several times, then it becomes an actual trail. So I want to tell you a story real quick. In the early 2000s, my family, my wife and I, and our children had to come home from seminary. We tried to go to seminary for one semester, but that's when we found out our daughter's diagnosis of autism was officially a part of our life. And so we had to come home from seminary. I couldn't continue in that realm with that level of workload, because we had to figure a lot of things out, So we came home, and I did a stint working for the post office. And I worked started off as a clerk, and then I started working as a city carrier. Well, one of the first things they had me do when I was a carrier was to sit with another driver and go through their route, right along with them. And we went through, I think it was over 300 mailboxes. And y'all, at least half of them had forewords, things to remember. Almost every single house had something unique to remember about it. So if you think postal workers aren't very bright, you may think they're lazy. Well, trust me, it's not easy. Don't let anybody tell you postal workers don't work hard, because I can assure you they do. So here I am riding with this guy, right? And I'm hearing him say, hey, if it says Clark, you need to hold on to that piece of mail. If it says Jones, even though most of the mail here says Adams, it still goes in the mailbox. And I looked at him, like I said, something every single mailbox. I looked at him, I said, dude, there is no flipping way I'm going to remember all that. And he said, trust me, do it every day for 6 months. He said, everybody says they won't be able to remember it, but they do. And guess what, y'all? I did. Repetition. Repetition is effective. Neurons that fire together wire together. It really is true. If you keep after something mentally, you really can accomplish it. So here's the practical part I promised to share. And I like these little 3-step plans. You'll hear me, I've developed several of these things. I like 3 steps. You heard the acronym KISS method, keep it simple, stupid. Well, that's the way I roll. I like 3-step plans. So this is a 3-step plan. It's pretty simple. But the first thing I want to ask you to do is to make a note. Now, if you still have that piece of paper with your funnel, you can put it on the, write this down on the left side of that paper if you'd like. But the first thing I want to ask you to do is get a sticky note or a piece of paper with some tape is fine. And I want to ask you to write this phrase. Now, you can make up any phrase you want that'll help you remember, but I just usually use this phrase. This question, how's my thinking? So, write that down on your paper, or write something similar on your paper, and tape it to your bathroom mirror, dash of your car, station at work, wherever you want to place it, somewhere that's a prominent place that you'll see regularly, because we're creatures of habit and we need to be reminded often. I have clients text me where they've placed their sticky note. So that's important to put it somewhere, that you're going to see regularly, because this is something that you're going to have to keep after, and you need to be reminded daily. And then, so that brings me to step 2. So step 1 is to write a note, sticky note. Step 2 is to ask yourself that question on the note at least 3 times a day. And I don't care if it's 1,000 times a day, that's fine. However many times you want to do it, but at least 3 times. Since I woke up this morning and put my shoes on, how are my thoughts? Since lunch, since I left work, pivotal points, during your day. Remind yourself of this plan. Repetition. Finally, step 3, though, is the most important step. And this is the part that I want to take my time and help you understand. The most important part of this plan is to tell yourself the truth. Am I really a terrible person? Can I really never be forgiven for this? Am I really never going to improve? Does this person who hurt me really have control over my life? Am I really never going to be able to pay my bills? That's not necessarily true. We have to choose hope, choose faith. It doesn't mean we're necessarily being in denial, but what is faith? Faith is the evidence of the change that we haven't seen yet. Faith is important in this life. We have to apply some of that faith to these thought patterns. You have to choose courage. You have to believe. You have to shift your thoughts to the right ones, to the ones that are healthy. I trust you. You're grown. You know which thoughts are better and which thoughts you need to shift away from. If you get stuck, if you keep telling yourself lies, then maybe you might need a counselor or someone else to help you. You might need a trusted friend or a mentor to kind of help you get out of that rut, to help you get a different perspective. But tell yourself the truth. Think about it. What are the lies that you're telling yourself? That it's your fault that your child misbehaves, for example. No, it's not. Your child makes their own choices. That's not your fault. Maybe there's some corrective action you can take. Maybe you're not doing everything you can. Sure, that may be true, but it's not your fault that your child makes mistakes. Your child has free will and can make choices on their own. Is it true that you're a terrible person who's in no way redeemable? No. But now look, if you see something in the mirror, you look in the mirror and you see something that needs to be fixed, well, sure, kick yourself in the tail and fix it. But you've got to tell yourself the truth. There is hope for change. Now, look, when your kid does something, you might be legally responsible for their choices. You might have to pay some fines, or, you might be legally responsible for them when they're a minor, but they are accountable. It's not your fault that they failed. You have to tell yourself the truth. So for those of you who are Christians, think about how Jesus defeated Satan in the wilderness. For the 40 days he was fasting in the wilderness. Afterwards, Satan came and tempted him. And 3 times Jesus said, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone. It is written, do not tempt the Lord your God. It is written, worship God and him only." The truth. If the truth is you need to change, that's fine. Change. Tell yourself that, but don't choose lies. Don't choose lies. I want to give you an analogy to help you with changing your thoughts. So this plan, this will help you with this plan. If you're driving down the road, for example, you run off on the shoulder a little bit, you don't slam on brakes and freak out. Oh my gosh. You just say, oops, right? You make a course correction and you get back on the road. That's how I want you to approach this thinking plan. Don't beat yourself up if you make a mistake with your thoughts. Don't waste energy beating yourself up. Just say, that's the old me. Oh yeah, that's the old me talking. And don't beat yourself up for beating yourself up. Get focused back in the right direction more quickly. Oops, that's not right. Make a course correction. Move on with your day. And you're going to have to rinse and repeat over and over and over. Major on successes, minor on failures, and you will see change. I truly believe you can do this. So today we talked about how to filter our thoughts, how to shift our thinking. Please feel free to go back and listen to it again if you missed a step. And I really am asking you to seriously try the practical steps of writing that note. Do that for me and let me know how it works. Go to my website and email me. Let me know how it's going. Put those notes in prominent places. Ask yourself, how's my thinking? Remember, tell yourself the truth. I hope you can take every one of those negative thoughts and put them on trial. Don't allow the irrational, the negative, to pull you downward. This is a choice. It's an intentional choice. It's a choice to have hope and not despair. And don't get bogged down if you slip a little bit. It's okay. You've been doing this same thing for so many years. It's going to take time. Just keep trying to change. And don't forget to check out my website, highergroundliving.net, for resources. And, keep trying, keep doing this, keep working on it. I just want to thank you so much for taking time to listen to stuff that works. If you found this helpful, please share it with a friend. This stuff doesn't need to be a secret. And please stay tuned for new podcasts every week. And come back next time to Higher Ground Living. Practical tools for lasting change. As we explore relationships, faith, emotional health, and the simple strategies that can help you build a better life.